Hello and benvenuti to our online audience here in Maranello. Fun to drive has always been part of the Ferrari DNA. And today, in the world premiere launch of the Ferrari 296 GTB, the latest evolution of Ferrari rear mid-engine two-seater berlinetta, we have pushed these boundaries even further. And to talk about this new car, I'm so glad to have with me today Enrico Galliera, who is the Chief Marketing and Commercial Officer, Michael Leiters, Chief Technical Officer,
Ciao.
and Flavio Manzoni, Chief Design Officer.
Ciao, Mark.
Enrico, a launch of a car is always such a special day, special occasion. What can you tell us about the name of the car?
Well, very simply, Ferrari 296 GTB. The name is always taking inspiration by our tradition with a number. And the number is, also in this case, representing one of the key characteristics of the car, which is the engine. Because on this car, we will come with the V6 engine, which is going to be the first ever application of a V6 engine to a Ferrari carrying the Ferrari badge. And 296 means 29, which stands for the engine displacement, is a 2.9 liter, and 6, which stands for the V6, plus GTB, which is always used in our tradition, which stands for Gran Turismo Berlinetta.
And this is not a substitute or evolution of a previous model. It's our second hybrid of the Ferrari range car. And how do you position it, for example, versus the F8 Tributo or the SF90?
Well, as you said, this is not substituting any other model in our product range. And this is consistent with our strategy. We always want to come with a product that is creating a new segment, consistently with our philosophy, different Ferraris for different Ferraristi or different moment. And in this case, we did exactly the same, working to create a new concept. I would say that the three key characteristics of this car, as I said, is the engine. I'm sure Michael will talk a lot later on. The dimension of the car is much more compact. We have been working on reducing the distance between the wheel, again, to achieve a specific objective, and also working a lot on all the electronic control of the car in order to work on the vehicle dynamic of the car. This has been done in order to achieve a very important objective, which is what we call fun to drive. This is going to be the car that in our range is achieving the highest level of fun to drive. Fun to drive, for me, means a smile when you're driving the car. And it's certainly positioned differently versus any other model in our product range. It's the second hybrid. As you mentioned, we already have the SF90 Stradale, which is the first hybrid in our product range. The difference is that the SF90 Stradale is designed for clients that want to achieve the peak of the performance. The new one, the 296 GTB, is designed for clients that want to reach the peak of the emotion to drive.
And Michael, Enzo Ferrari used to say that the engine is the soul of the car. And 296 GTB will be the first road car Ferrari production car with a V6 engine. What can you tell us about the V6 turbo hybrid powertrain?
Yeah, it's the first time, as you mentioned, and it's a brand new engine from sheet, blank sheet, 6-cylinder with a hot V. Has a special angle, 120 degrees, that we can really put in the turbos in the middle of the engine and to have a lower center of gravity for the car. The integration of this engine in the powertrain and in the car was very important to have a compact power unit. And we optimized a lot also the ducts of the aspiration to reduce all counter pressures to have the maximum of power output. We have 663 horsepower, which is the highest specific power output in the market, 221 horsepower per liter. And we combine that with a hybrid system, which we partially know from the SF90 Stradale, with an electric motor with 127 horsepower and with a hybrid battery, which we put very low in the car to have the best integration of the power unit in the car.
The first time I drove the car, I was very impressed by the acceleration, but also very impressed by the sound, especially on high revs. It's like music to my ears, you know. how much effort did the engineers put into achieving such result?
Yeah, sound is always one of the most important things for us to involve the customer and the driver in driving a Ferrari, and we put a lot of effort in it. It starts with the combustion itself, with the architecture of the engine, the length of the tubes, where you position the turbo and the catalyst converters. And we have an innovation here on this car, which we call a hot tube, where we really take the waves before the catalyst and bring them to the cabin, near to the ear of the driver. This is very important, and as you know, you'd call it music. I think it's the right word for that, because we have a certain concept with low revs, low tones, high revs, very metallic, and high frequencies, so that you have really, with your acceleration, you combine what you can hear and what you can feel by the acceleration.
Thank you. And then Flavio, the first thing that stands out when we look at the car is the design, such a compact design. A short wheelbase car, which challenges and opportunities does it give you when you design such a short wheelbase car?
Yes, of course. This is the shortest wheelbase of our range. So it has been a fantastic opportunity for my team and I to design a car which looks very compact, very agile. It's a beautiful sculpture in motion. And we decided to work on the purity of the concept, of the form. So combining, I think this is a concept that combines elegance and sportiness at the same time. You can see how beautiful are the muscles with a very, let's say, original touch. There is the rear muscle on the rear fender that, of course, recalls some Ferraris of the past, some elements of the Ferraris of the past, especially the 250 LM. So you can easily recognize this type of formal language. We also worked on the cabin, which looks very compact, also thanks to the vertical rear screen, which is something really unique in our range, and the wraparound effect of let's say, the visor effect of the cabin that pushes the cabin forward with a kind of cab forward effect, and with a beautiful tail, where we worked on a concept which is typical at Ferrari, that is the cam tail. So we basically decided to create a facet on the rear and then work on this peculiar combination of languages, very modern details, and a beautiful and I would say also a timeless line.
And this design also generates or is helping performance because it generates 360 kilos of downforce at 250 kilometers an hour, but there's no aerodynamic appendices. It's everything integrated. How can you achieve that?
This has been another beautiful challenge. So how to keep the shape so pure, so elegant, so refined, although all these aspects. So it's another example of a beautiful synergy between designers and aerodynamicists, where actually, I would say, the trick is normally to concentrate most of the technical devices on the lower layer, which is dark, because we want to work on these two layers. So the body color part of the car looks very elegant, let's say a pure sculpture, and the rest is technical, but a kind of second reading level. And there are beautiful solutions like the rear spoiler, which is hidden between the two, the lights, the rear lights, with a beautiful, I think, beautiful theme characterizing the rear, and the spoiler comes out when needed. And there is another beautiful, let's say, device integrated into the front diffuser, in the front, splitter, that is a kind of double wing, very characteristic, that keeps the front very pure anyway, because this was the intention. So integration of the aerodynamic devices, but in a kind of pure and elegant context.
And finally, the cockpit also looks very innovative. What can you tell us about the cockpit?
Yeah, actually, we started from the definition of the human-machine interface. So this full digital interface, which is based on some, let's say, full digital screens, especially let's say the cluster, which is a wraparound screen freeform. And the idea was basically to keep the hands on the steering wheel and the eye on the road. So we started defining this. That is, I think, a very advanced approach, also because, I mean, we can reconfigure all the screens, and when the car is switched off, everything becomes very pure, very, very simple. So there is a link with the exterior regarding that.
Michael, when we talk about fun to drive, another very important element is vehicle dynamics. Which are the technical elements that give this go-kart feeling? You know, that being a car very responsive, but yet you feel that you are in control of the car.
I guess this is very important, as you mentioned, because if you are scared driving a car, it doesn't make fun. No? So the controls are very important. But the first thing is to work on the mechanical part, on the architecture. And that's the reason why we decided to have only 50, that we reduce the wheelbase by 50 millimeters. And this reduces dramatically the inertia of the car. So this makes it easier to steer in a curve. We worked a lot on the weight. You have to consider we have to have here extra weight on the hybrid system, which we compensated. We have to lower the powertrain to have a lower center of gravity. That helps also. And then the controls itself. We have a new sensor on board, which is able to measure 6 ways. And that allows us to estimate very, very precisely how close we are to the limit. And this gives us more control and more performance at the end. To give you one example, the brake distance from 200 to 0 were reduced by about 9%, 107 meters. So this is really a lot. This is not only driving dynamics, this is also safety.
And finally, I'm sure our audience would like to know, you've given now numbers about braking.
Yeah.
What about acceleration, for example, or power-to-weight ratio, or even hybrid? How many kilometers can you do? Any numbers that our audience would like to know?
So some performance figures, 0 to 100, 2.9 seconds, 0 to 200, 7.3 seconds. We have, for us, a new record, 1.77 power-weight ratio. And we know our customers appreciate a lot from the SF90 that we have also an electric range. And again, we go here up to a speed of 135 kph and 25 kilometers electric range.
And Enrico, for those who want to exploit these dynamic capabilities even further, today we are presenting also the Assetto Fiorano. What can you tell us about it?
This is always the additional challenge we put on the technical team of Michael, because we want to create even something more that is maybe designed for, as you mentioned, the client that wants to reach the peak of the performance and fully exploit the potential fun to drive, maybe on track. So we designed this Assetto Fiorano, which is basically allowing to further enjoy the driving, thanks to, I would say, 3 main factors that have been introduced. Number one, there has been an additional extensive work in further reducing the weight using carbon fiber components. Secondly, we have been adding suspension derived from our racing experience that are further improving the performance. And last but not least, we have designed with Flavio and his team a new, fully dedicated, very exclusive livery that makes the appearance of the car even more sporty.
Thank you. Also, as you can see, with the 296 GTB, we have brought this concept of fun to drive even further. And of course, keeping this sportiness, performance, and driving thrill. So thank you very much. After this short video, we're going to start with the Q&A session. Thank you, and Forza Ferrari.
Welcome back. I'm sure you have many questions. I have, before we get into the session, I'd like to make one question to Michael. You gave us many numbers just now. I think there's one number that you've been keeping secret, which I'm sure everyone's interested to know, which is the combined horsepower of both the electric and combustion.
The entire power output of the powertrain is 830 horsepower, and to be precise, because before I mistaken also, it's 167 by the electric powertrain and 663 by the combustion powertrain.
So 830 is really a best in class for this sort of car, right?
And a light car, by the way, so it's a good acceleration you can feel.
Great. So I think we've surprised quite a lot of people with that. Before we get into the questions on normal housekeeping, which I'm sure you're all familiar with already, so, but I'll quickly repeat them. Written questions, please, in English through the platform that you know already. Any unanswered questions that we can't get through in this session, our press office will catch up with you afterwards. All the material is now available, video, press release, photos, and there's no embargo anymore, so you can use them straight away as you wish. We have translations that we've had done in the past, 7 languages. You simply have to pick out the language that you want. I've been asked this time round to, before each question, to let the translators finish the end of the question before. So if I look as though I'm in freeze frame, it's only because I'm holding on for the translators. So let's get into the session. Enrico, you're always the first person, because we know people want to know, once they've seen the great new car we've got, they want to know what about the deliveries, the price. So let's fill that in straight away.
Yeah, so let's clean the house. That's the easiest answer to take. So the car will be delivered, the first car will be delivered in Q1 2022. As always, European left-hand drive countries, and then all the other will follow straight away. The price is drive away price Italy, so including VAT, is going to be 269,000 euro, including the Fiorano pack. The Fiorano Pacchetto Fiorano is going to be 302,000 euro.
So the Fiorano is going to be available at the same time?
So clients, since the very beginning, will have the possibility to choose whether to have the, let's call it standard version, or the Assetto Fiorano one.
Okay. Okay, our first question from Motorsport France. Does this car replace the F8 Tributo? And how is it positioned in the range? You touched on this talking with Mark, but maybe you want to add a few more details.
Yeah, maybe I can add a few considerations. As I already mentioned before, this model is not replacing any other model in our product range, and is not replacing the F8 Tributo, of course. It's going to complete the product range, because we consider this as a model that creates a new segment. It's going to be the third two-seater mid-rear engine model in our product range. And the difference is not only the price, because as you already know now, the price is in between the F8 and the SF90 Stradale, but it's having a concept that is completely different. To make it very simple, F8 Tributo, as the name is stating, was the tribute to the most successful engine in our history, the V8 turbo engine that has been awarded best engine of the world for several years in a row. And it's a car that is designed for driver that wants to have a relevant output in terms of power, combined with a very lightweight body. On the other extreme, we have the SF90 Stradale, which on the contrary is what we consider the supercar in the range. 1,000 horsepower, four-wheel drive, combined between the combustion engine and the electric engine. Basically, it is the car that is addressed for the clients that want to reach the peak of the performance. It is the best you can have in terms of performance in the Ferrari range. And now we have the 296 GTB, that is the car that is creating a new segment, which means that it's designed to be the most fun to drive car in our product range, because of the several activities that we did that we already talked about, and maybe we can leverage on also in this conversation.
Thanks. Still France, Sport Auto. Michael, this is a technical one. Is the gearbox the same as the one on the SF90 Stradale?
Yeah, with the SF90 Stradale, we have introduced a new gearbox, 8-speed double clutch transmission gearbox. We use here a modified version with little modifications. One is that we have also a reverse gear, and second is that we have a very particularly short gears. One, to have this Ferrari typical progression in the acceleration, and the second one is that it helps us also to have a certain acceleration when we are in e-driving.
Japan, still a comparison with F8 Tributo. How much has the 296 GTB center of gravity been lowered compared to the F8 Tributo?
That's a very good question because we spend a lot of effort to lower the center of gravity, because this is one key element to have an enhanced driving dynamics. So we lowered the center of gravity of the car versus an F8, for example, by 10 millimeters, and this is done, by the way, also by the powertrain, which is 50 millimeters lower than in previous applications.
Okay, lots of questions about the technical development of the car here from Quattro Rotti, Italy. Given that the battery on this car has been positioned below the floor, where it helps improve the center of gravity and the polar moment of inertia, why wasn't this solution adopted on the SF90 Stradale?
I mean, the powertrain of both cars are totally different. One has a V8, and the V8 forced us to foresee a certain volume package for the powertrain, so it was not possible to lower so much the battery as we have done here. So here, due to the architecture of the car and the very, very compact design of the V6 engine, we have been able to install in a lower position the battery. That helps again for driving dynamics and so on.
Thank you. Alda Zeitung, Germany. Will the concept of a mid-engine V8 Berlinetta survive, or is it fully replaced by this new car?
So I will take on this question, which is really something I tackled before. I mean, the concept of mid-rear engine has never been strong as today in the Ferrari range, because now we have 3 models. And in the specific, talking about the V8, the SF90 Stradale was recently added to the product range, again witnessing our interest in this kind of concept. So we have it. It's well represented now with 2 models, the F8, which is an V8 turbo engine, and the SF90 Stradale, that is a hybrid turbo engine. So it is still there. Looking at the future, as you know, we never talk about the future model, but there is a word that is unpredictability that we use to present our future plans. So stay tuned, because we have many ideas also for the future.
Okay, let's have a look at this question. Top Gear Korea. This is again just having a quick look for lighters. I'm sure we'll get to a question to you soon, Flavio. What was the most critical solution for integrating parts that can function at peak temperatures over 900 degrees Celsius and electric components that must function at lower temperatures without breaking weight balance of the car? So a question of the extremes of temperature in the car, how did you manage it?
This was one of the biggest challenges developing this car. So first is you have to sustain the material that it can sustain these high temperatures. And if you consider 221 horsepower per liter, this is an extreme density of energy we have to manage. So this was the first thing, and we have used very, very innovative materials, especially on the cylinder heads, to reach these targets. Second point is that we have to cool well all the things. So we have a high temperature cooling and we have a mid temperature cooling, one for the engine and one for the electric part. And then obviously you have to ventilate the engine compartment. And this is also very sophisticated. You have to protect some parts, and the ventilation you can see also on the rear bonnet. There are some vents. They are working like a chimney, so that the hot air can exit both when you are in speed or when you are stopped on a traffic light or wherever. So this was really, and the number is quite right. So 900 degrees. It's very hot, so you see glowing also the turbo if they are acting in high power mode.
Flavio, a question for you. Quattro Rotte Italy. Was the engine cooling aspect, we're back continuing this conversation, was the engine cooling aspect one of the most difficult issues to resolve from a design point of view?
Yeah, actually this is probably the most complicated area of the car. As Michael was saying before, there is a high density of devices and functions as well. So it was quite hard to resolve the shape considering the cluster of elements. There are air vents for the oil radiator, for example, or for the cooling of the vent and so on. And I think that finally we could resolve it with a pure shape, having in mind all the functions and trying to resolve the complexity of it with a beautiful shape, with a sculpted shape. Also the rear, the facet that I explained before, gathers many components. There is the exhaust in the center, there are the two outlets on the lower part. But in the end, it's always a matter of understanding the needs and then also try to draw inspiration from them in order to resolve the shape.
The Autoculture Poland, also on design, Flavio. How much was this design inspired by the P80C?
Well, there is not so much shared with this car, but normally what we do is we work on our let's say, linguistic codes that belong to the brand. So it's a kind of, let's say, vocabulary dictionary that we work on, always with the idea of innovating, and so it's a combination between, let's say, tradition somehow and also vision and innovation and invention. Maybe there is some similarity on the concept of the flying bridge, but the interpretation is completely different. As, for example, on the SF90 Stradale, where there is also a concept, the concept of a flying bridge, but with a completely different touch.
Okay. El Mundo, Spain. What are the main differences between the batteries of this car and the SF90 Stradale? Continuing the comparison with the SF90, also in terms of charging time.
So, first of all, the battery pack is different, but the cell is the same. We had already on the SF90 Stradale the cell with the best power density in the market, so there were no reason to change this. We have the same excellent cell here. We have 4 cells less than on the SF90, and in consequence, also the charging time is a little bit less, so it's 5% less than on the SF90.
Autobild Germany. Why did you develop a completely new engine instead of building a V6 from existing engine concepts? Or, this is interesting, or even starting a cooperation with Maserati and their newly developed V6?
Now, first of all, to state that, I mean, we are Ferrari, and the engine is the core of a Ferrari. We can't take something over from somebody else. And I think this concept is so particular, and this gives us so much advantages, not only from the engine side, but also from the vehicle side, from the integration, from the installation, the package is fantastic. As we mentioned before, lower the powertrain, have a more compact car. If you drive this car, this is a fantastic, like go-kart feeling, as we mentioned before with Mark. I mean, we have shortened the wheelbase by 50 millimeters. This has such an important impact on the inertia and on the driving dynamics. We couldn't do that with any other engine than which the engine we have.
Sorry, how much have we shortened it by? I didn't quite...
50 millimeters.
50 millimeters. Okay.
Okay. It's a lot. It seems little, but it has a huge impact. Huge impact.
I think if I may add, leveraging on what Michael is saying, everything starts from the concept. This car was designed to create a new segment, the most fun to drive car in the segment. In order to achieve that, it was necessary to do what Michael said, develop a new engine with the characteristic he was mentioning that allow the overall package to deliver what we were asking.
Motograph from South Korea. Speaking of Ferrari V6 engine, it is hard to avoid talking of the Dino. No, it's true, of our history. Is there any specific reason why this new car is not named after Dino, which has a very long heritage and meaning just in itself? So, Enrico.
Well, honestly, I was waiting for this question because the Dino concept has been, and it is, one of the most iconic concepts in the Ferrari history. Everyone knows the Dino, and it's a question that frequently comes even outside the normal car presentation to our strategy, when the Dino will come back in the offering of Ferrari. I think the answer is that it's true, there are some similarities, mainly the engine, because the Dino was probably the first road car carrying the V6 engine, but it was not carrying the Ferrari badge. And the reason that I'm sure everyone knows was connected to the fact that the Dino was developed, first of all, to attract new clients, to enter a new segment. And in order to do that, Ferrari accepted to have some compromise in terms of space, in terms of dimension, in terms of performance, also in terms of price. And that are the reason behind the choice that was taken at that time not to badge the car with the Ferrari badge. Now, the 296 GTB is not having this kind of positioning and is not having this kind of concept. It is sharing the V6. But the 296 is a true Ferrari in terms of performance. It's certainly not an entry price. And most of all, is creating a new segment in terms of performance that is not consistent with the one of the Dino. So using the Dino name would have been a nice marketing strategy, but not pretty much consistent with the product strategy. So we decided to give dignity to this car, creating his own name and his own positioning in our product range, leaving the Dino one for that beautiful, iconic car that we like to see in our classic tour.
Road and track from Australia. Is there an engine or road speed at which the MG UK decouples and stops supplying power? That's one for you, Michael.
No, the MG UK is positioned between the engine and the gearbox. It's able to decouple, but there's no need, no necessity to do that. So we can go up to the maximum rev of 8,500 RPM, and we have no need to decouple it. To support an e-drive, we can go up until 135 kph.
Nikkei Pertek in Japan. Again, back to the issue about the shortening the wheelbase. When you decided to use the V6, did you also decide to shorten the wheelbase? Obviously we did, because we did it. Maybe can you give us some specific points about the compactness of the V6 engine, as well as the benefits of the 120-degree V engine?
Okay. So as we mentioned before, it's important to understand the concept we have. We are talking about a hybrid car. We have to compensate weight. We have to regain driving dynamics to have really this fun to drive feeling that we have. One element, apart from reducing weight, is to lower the center of gravity. So if you have an NV with 90 degrees and you open it, obviously the cylinder heads are going down more, so you are reducing the center of gravity. And then we have the point that, as I mentioned before, that a shortened wheelbase is reducing the inertia of the car, and so this go-kart feeling when you steer in a curve, it's unbelievable with this shortened wheelbase. So that was another reason to select a V6 concept. About 40 millimeters, the V6 is shorter than V8. Mm-hmm. So the main part of this shortened wheelbase is also thanks to the new V6 engine. It's really a conceptual choice we have done.
Okay. C Magazine from Philippines. Enrico, this is a marketing question. Do you expect the new car to draw new buyers to the brand, or do you expect a lot of interest from traditional Ferrari owners?
Well, let's say yes and no. Let me try to explain. The role to increase the number of new Ferrari drivers, also bringing people that were not driving sports car in the family, is a target, is an objective that we are targeting with the Ferrari Roma. Ferrari Roma was aiming at increasing the family, attracting new to Ferrari buyers. With this one, we consider that the main target will be car enthusiasts, people that like to drive, that are willing to experience the maximum possible emotion. So it's going to be addressed to car lovers that aim to drive. And in that perspective, it will also attract new to Ferrari clients. It will be very much appreciated by the existing Ferrari client. But we are expecting also many other clients that today are driving other model to be attracted also by this one. So yes, we expect to have also a good portion of new to Ferrari clients, even though this one will be appreciated by the key client, and mainly on car enthusiasts.
Okay, clear. Car Magazine from UK. Can we assume the structure is aluminium? Is it related to the chassis structure of either the SF90 or the F8 Tributo, and if so, to what extent? Michael.
Yeah, consider that the beam stiffness is versus an F8 or 25-28% higher. The torsional rigidness is about 60% better than on an F8. So we have no carryover from the F8. It's a totally new chassis. Obviously, we have some communities to the SF90 Stradale, but as I explained before, you have some differences on the architecture that forced us also to modify and to do some changes. So in the front, we don't have an all-wheel drive, so we could make it lighter, a little bit different. We have a shortened wheelbase, and so on and so on. So there are many, many common concepts, but this is really, let me say, a totally new car with a new architecture.
Evo from Australia. While they feature different V angles, the new Ferrari VC the new Ferrari shares bore and stroke and total Sorry, I'm not quite clear on the English here. While they feature different V angles, let's say, I think the question is, I'll return the question. Is there any commonality between the Maserati's Nettuno V6 and R1? I think this is what the question is asking.
As I mentioned before, Ferrari doesn't copy anybody or taking over something carry over something from others. So we have our ideas, and this stroke is typical for Ferrari since years. And we didn't have the necessity to have a collaboration or something like that. Yeah. We are very focused on our competences, and we are using them to make really something specific for Ferrari and for our customers.
Enrico, I think I'll give you this one. The car buyer from Singapore obviously there's the theme about the acceleration electrification, which we have very close to our hearts. And has this increased the overall trend, increased the urgency at which we're approaching this?
Well, let me say that our strategy versus the electrification was something that we have been discussing extensively when we first introduced our strategy during the Capital Market Day 3 years ago. And it was already clear since then that we were pushing in developing the electrification of our product range, out of which the SF90 Stradale has been the first execution, and now the 296 GTB is the second one. And this is also consistent with the development time of any of our model that takes around 3 years. So the decision around this car has been taken 3 years ago. And this is again consistent with our strategy that we are constantly developing to capture the opportunities that the electric engine is giving, in this case adding performance to the combustion engine. And so working to maximize the performance while obtaining also the benefit of reducing the emission. And we keep working in a very disciplined way towards this electrification strategy. And it's not a secret that in our future plans we are working on the future development that has been recently explained, aiming and confirming our objective to come and to present our first fully electric model in 2025. But this is, as I was mentioning, a strategy that is starting from some years ago, where we drafted our future plans to cope with the changing situation, coping with the regulations, but most of all, working to reduce the emission as we committed for.
Top Gear in UK. Will there be a hardcore track version of this car, a future Speciale or Pista? And if so, will that version focus on aero and weight, considering the drivetrain has so much power already?
Well, today we are here to talk about the new 296 GTB. And as you know, and I was mentioning before, we don't like to speculate about future models, on which we keep working with a lot of passion, and on which we will come as soon as we will have some relevant news, so being able to create a new concept. So maybe we will come if we will be able to find something relevant to put on this car. For the time being, we recently introduced the special version of the 812 Superfast, the new Competizione and Competizione Aperta, which are already representing our best execution of the special edition car.
Sport Auto from France. What are the weights of the battery and the electric motor? The new V6 is 30 kilos lighter than the V8, but what is its weight?
So the electric motor is 22 kilograms. The battery is about 77 kilos. The engine is about 185 kilograms, but please consider there that everybody is measuring with, without liquids, so it's different to compare. We have it with all in, without liquids, sorry. So, but we invested a lot to reduce the weight and all this. The battery is 2 kilos lighter than the battery of the SF90, again, because we have less cells and so on. So we optimize really the whole parameter of the power unit to have a best weight on that car.
Oh, lots of interest about the developments. El Mundo from Spain. What are the main differences between this car and the SF90 Stradale's batteries, also in the terms of charging time? We just had that one, didn't we? Didn't we? No, we covered that one.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Freelance from France. Again, a comparison with the SF90 Stradale. Now, what is the difference in terms of the weight?
So the weight of the 296 GTB is about 100 kilos less. So we have a dry weight of 1,470 kilograms. So you can compare this weight with an 488 GTB. So Nevertheless, we have hybrid components here on board. It's the same weight like a 488 GTB. So this is really, I think, a good result. It gives you also an impression how dynamic this car will be.
Yeah, obviously all of these numbers as well we've included in the press kit. So if you want to pick up on any of the details, you'll find all of them there. A freelance from the USA. What is the lap time for the new model?
1:21. 1 minute 21 seconds.
1 minute 21. Okay. Mr. Car Professor from mainland China.
That's a nice name.
Now we're talking about the developments for the future. Will all Ferraris get hybrid systems in the future? And what's Ferrari's plan for the combustion sports cars? And is Ferrari planning a fully electric model? Well, we've partly answered that because Enrico was saying 2025 is when we've declared the new electric model. And I think we sort of covered those questions. So let's move on to the next one. Automotive news from Europe. Who is the main target customer?
Well, I think I already mentioned something. The target customer will be someone already driving sports car that wants to enjoy the maximum thrill of performance and emotion to drive. Both existing Ferrari clients and non-existing Ferrari clients.
Full Throttle Company from South Korea. What is the next step for the zero-emission sports cars? How can you achieve the sports car sound with this powertrain?
So first of all, I guess we have to appreciate that we now as Ferrari, we have really done a big step on hybridization. And I think we will, on the sports car, we will see how powerful this technology is. So we have now 2 cars in the range, and today we are talking about the 296, and I guess we have said everything about the electrification of the future. To talk about the sound is one of the most important elements for our customers enjoying our cars. We have here really, there are many elements. The architecture, the 120-degree V angle we have the length of the tubes that are always with the same length, where you position the turbo. We have a single exhaust system, so we are unifying later on the exhaust line the 2 tubes. This helps us also to amplify, and we called it in the development phase a little 12-cylinder. I know Enrico doesn't like this expression, but it characterized very well how emotional this sound is, because it's really like an aspirated engine. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you explained it very well in the video that people will be able to see on our website. In the video that you did talking about the sound, I think that came out really strongly. It's particular for this car, the emotion that comes out with the sound. Evo UK, when did you decide to use a V6 engine, and was the SF90 V8 considered? Michael, this is your day. Mikkel, this is your day. You're getting all the questions.
Everybody is very interested in the engine. I'm very happy because we worked a lot on that. But as I tried to explain before, really the V6 was a decision not only driven by the engine itself. So it's not only to do downsizing and all that stuff, or weight itself, but really the installations, the package, the architecture of the car was so important. And to underline, the short wheelbase has really an enormous impact on the fun-to-drive effect of the car. So again, it was a concept choice. It was not a single engine choice to have the V6 here.
Mm-hmm. Enrico, we're again talking about the Dino. Let's just pick this up again, and although I think you were quite clear and how we managed the Dino last time, but the question we have here is can it be seen as a modern age Dino? We were saying no.
I think I already answered. Yeah. No, it's just sharing the V6 engine. And then in terms of concept and positioning, as I was mentioning before, this car has all the elements to be considered as a really standalone car.
Flavio, perhaps you'd like to sort of say what you felt was the most innovative part of the car that has given you most satisfaction on this particular project.
Personally, I like very much the rear. The rear is really peculiar because it's a combination between modernity and classic elements. There is a quote of, as I said before, the quote of the 250 LM. But it's just a way to, let's say, to talk about the Ferrari language. But the rear with this peculiar shape, and I think it's very, very interesting.
And
I like the modernity
exhaust,
of it.
I think, the exhaust in particular, I think is very...
The exhaust is really original. So I like the configuration of the elements that allowed us to create something really clean, very clear, and also original, unique. I like the fact that we could, for example, we could integrate with a kind of, let's say, black screen effect, the spoiler, the active spoiler with the rear lamps, which creates something really, really unique. So I think that three-quarter rear view is really amazing.
There's another question for Michael. So the development of this car is obviously drawing a lot of attention. The 120-degree bank angle makes for a very wide engine, which I imagine would be a packaging challenge. So what is the benefit of a 120-degree bank angle versus the conventional 60 or 90?
The main benefit is to lower the powertrain and the center of gravity of the powertrain. So if you have a V with a 90 degrees and you open it, as I mentioned before, the cylinder heads are going down, this lowers the center of gravity. And then, obviously, we worked a lot on optimizing the package. It's a good point. So we have very short ducts. We have a very straight exhaust line. So all these elements reduce the counter pressures and optimizes the performance of the engine.
Auto Zeitung from Germany. In reverse, does the car use a separate gear or is it electronically driven like the SF Malanta?
We have a separate gear on this gearbox. On the SF90 we use the front axle to do the reverse. Here we are doing it by, let me say, the normal classical powertrain part.
Another question from a German magazine. Can you pronounce that for me?
Neue Zürcher Zeitung.
Thank you, that's much better.
Germany.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
But I guess it's Switzerland, I don't know.
Okay, you pronounce it much better than I can. Anyway, although you don't state any fuel consumption figures due to ongoing homologation, is the WLTP fuel figure one of the major motives to launch yet another FEF?
I guess it's a point, but I guess it's worthwhile that we state also that this is also a technology reason, okay? So we are using hybrid technology not only to reduce emissions, we are using it in a Ferrari typical way to improve our performances. And this is a very important message. If you have a 296 GTB, this is a real Ferrari with enormous fun to drive and very, very best-in-class performances.
Okay, so we're up to our last question. Although I see this is a great way to finish our session. It's not a question, it's a comment. It's from Champagne Spy in Switzerland. The comment is, love, love, love this new 296 GTB. Hats off to the Ferrari team for constantly innovating, with 2 exclamation marks.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. A great way to finish our session. Just remind you, if we didn't manage to cover all of your questions, the press office is available. You've got the press kit with the photos, videos, everything you need, but please feel to contact us if you need, and thank you very much.
Thank you.